When a man truly understands the power of silence and detachment, everything begins to change. Most men panic when a woman pulls away. They overthink, overreact, and overpursue, believing that more effort will somehow fix what's broken. But the truth is, the more you chase, the more she runs. The more you beg for attention, the more she loses respect for you. That's why silence, true, calm, unbothered silence, becomes your greatest weapon. It's not about playing games. It's about reclaiming your value. It's about showing, not telling, that your world doesn't revolve around her anymore. When you stop reaching out, stop checking her social media, stop trying to get her attention, something powerful happens. She begins to feel a shift in the energy. The man who used to text her first, who used to double message, who used to care too much, he's suddenly gone. That silence hits her in waves. At first, she may feel relief, thinking you finally gave up. She might even convince herself that she's in control. But deep down, there's a part of her that notices the absence. The attention she once took for granted has vanished. And with time, that absence grows heavier. Silence forces her to confront her own emotions. It holds a mirror up to her ego. Women are emotional creatures, and they're used to men reacting. They're used to being chased, comforted, or reassured. But when you refuse to play that game, you disturb her emotional rhythm. She starts to wonder, why isn't he trying anymore? Did he move on? Did he stop caring? And those thoughts begin to create curiosity. Curiosity slowly transforms into confusion, and confusion turns into regret. That's how silence begins to destroy her ego quietly, gradually, and powerfully. The key is that your silence must come from strength, not pain. If you're sitting around obsessing over her every move, your silence isn't real. It's just suppressed desperation. But when you truly let go, when you focus on your own purpose, when you start rebuilding your confidence and independence, your silence becomes magnetic. Women can feel that energy shift even without words. The moment she senses that you no longer need her validation, the power dynamic changes completely. Every text you don't send, every call you don't make, every moment you choose peace over reaction, it all adds up. It tells her, I don't chase, I attract. I'm not trying to convince you of my worth, I'm living it. And that's when the tables start to turn. Because a man who doesn't need her approval becomes the man she starts to miss. The longer you stay detached, the louder your silence becomes. It makes her realize what she's lost, not because you said anything, but because your absence spoke louder than any words ever could. When you master the art of silence, you don't just destroy her ego, you rebuild your own power. When you go silent, something interesting begins to happen. She starts replaying everything in her mind, every conversation, every moment, every mistake. At first, she might convince herself that she's fine, that your absence doesn't matter. She'll distract herself, post on social media, go out with friends, and pretend she's happier than ever. But all of that is an act, a temporary defense mechanism to protect her ego from the truth. That she's starting to feel your absence deeper than she expected. You see, women are emotional beings. And when they no longer receive the attention they were used to, their mind begins to spiral. She starts wondering, why hasn't he reached out? Did I push him too far? Is he already moving on? These questions start small, but over time they become louder and more persistent. The silence forces her to sit in uncertainty, and that uncertainty is what drives her crazy. Women crave emotional validation, and when you take that away, they begin to lose control over the situation. Suddenly, she's not the one in power anymore. You are. Because silence creates mystery, and mystery creates attraction. The beauty of your silence is that it doesn't just make her miss you, it makes her question herself. She starts comparing your calm detachment to every other man who chases, pleads, or begs. She realizes that you're different. You're not desperate. You're not emotional. You're You're composed. That emotional discipline becomes your biggest advantage. It shows her that you're not dependent on her attention to feel whole, that you've mastered yourself. And that's something rare, something powerful, something magnetic. As time passes, she begins to notice the emotional gap that you once filled. You were the one who gave her stability, excitement, and validation. Now that energy is gone, and the people she tries to replace it with don't feel the same. The conversations lack depth, the connections feel shallow, and the attention she receives doesn't have the same weight. That's when the regret starts to creep in. She begins to see your silence not as weakness, but as strength. It becomes proof that you were never the one chasing. She was the one losing someone who truly cared. Silence also allows her emotions to mature. The longer she doesn't hear from you, the more she begins to romanticize you. Her memory starts to filter out the negative moments and focus on the good ones. That's human psychology. Distance makes emotions stronger, not weaker. And when a woman starts missing the way you made her feel, it's only a matter of time before she reaches out. So while she's overanalyzing every moment, every message, every silence, you stay calm, you stay focused, you let her thoughts do the work for you, because when you remain silent with self-control and confidence, her own mind becomes the voice that calls her back to you. As the silence stretches on, something profound begins to shift inside her. At first, she tried to convince herself that she didn't care, that your absence was no big deal. But now, that quiet has turned into a mirror, forcing her to face emotions she's been avoiding. Every night, when she's alone and the distractions fade, that silence begins to echo. It's in those quiet moments that she starts realizing how much she misses your energy, your voice, your presence. It's not that she suddenly remembers you, it's that she feels you. She feels the void you left, the calmness you brought, the attention that once made her feel special. She starts to notice that no one else measures up. The conversations she has with others don't feel the same. The attention she gets online feels empty. The excitement she once had when you texted her, it's gone. And that's when confusion starts to take over her emotions. She begins to ask herself, why does his silence bother me so much? Why can't I stop thinking about him? The longer she sits with these questions, the more she realizes that your silence has power. Not because you're playing games, but because it reveals her attachment. You see, silence has a way of resetting dynamics. When you stop reaching out, you're no longer the one feeding her ego. And when the ego starves, the heart starts to speak. She begins to reflect on her behavior, the time she took you for granted, the time she ignored your efforts or dismissed your presence. Suddenly, those moments replay in her mind like a movie she can't turn off. Guilt creeps in, regret follows, and that combination hits harder than any words ever could. And here's what makes this stage so powerful. She doesn't just miss you. She starts admiring you again. Because in a world where everyone is desperate for attention, you chose silence. You chose peace over proving yourself. That makes her see you differently. The man she once thought she could control is now the man she can't stop thinking about. You've become a mystery again, unpredictable, emotionally grounded, and untouchable. And that mystery pulls her in stronger than any message ever could. Now, instead of wondering if you'll text her, she wonders if she lost you for good. That fear becomes her motivation. The silence becomes a test she feels she's failing. She starts to imagine what it would be like if you truly moved on, if another woman was now getting the energy she once had. That thought burns her inside, not because she's jealous, but because deep down, she knows she had something real and let it slip away. Your silence becomes her teacher. It humbles her. It forces her to see what she refused to see before. that you were the one who brought value, balance, and depth into her life. And when that realization hits her fully, that's when she finally understands silence wasn't your weakness, it was your strength. When a woman realizes your silence isn't temporary, that it's not about ego or games, but genuine detachment, that's when the panic begins to set in. At first, she might still believe you'll come back, that you'll eventually break the silence like before, but as time passes and you remain grounded, calm, and emotionally distant, she begins to understand something she never expected. She's no longer in control. That loss of control is what shakes her core, because it's not just your attention she's losing, it's the feeling of being desired, prioritized, and emotionally significant. Every day that goes by without your message, without your presence, begins to hit her harder. She starts noticing small things, a random song, an old memory, or even the way someone says your name, and suddenly you're right there in her mind again. The silence becomes louder than any argument or goodbye could ever be. It's not just that you're gone, it's that your absence now carries weight. It forces her to think about how effortlessly you accepted distance, how you didn't beg, chase, or try to fix things. And that calmness, that quiet confidence tells her something powerful. You've moved on emotionally. Now her thoughts begin to shift from pride to curiosity, then from curiosity to regret. She starts replaying her choices, wondering why she pulled away, why she didn't value you when you were there. She might even start checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, or creating reasons to contact you. But what she's really doing is trying to fill the silence that's exposing her emotion, because deep down, that silence is reminding her of what she lost, not just a man, but stability, care, and genuine connection. The longer you remain silent, the more she starts to question herself. She'll ask, did he really move on? Was I wrong about him? Does he even think about me anymore? That uncertainty eats away at her confidence. And for someone who once believed she had emotional control, that's devastating. Your silence forces her to see that her actions had consequences, that she pushed away someone who was genuinely there for her. And now she can't undo it. You see, silence has this unique power to reveal truth. It shows who truly values communication, effort, and emotional connection. When you stay silent, you're not just ignoring her, you're letting her confront her own behavior. You're allowing her to face herself without your reassurance. And that's where real transformation happens, because for the first time, she's not focused on what you did wrong. She's focused on what she lost because of what she did. This is when the realization fully hits her. She wasn't just missing your attention. She was missing the version of herself that existed when she was with you. The version that felt seen, appreciated, and safe. And once that realization settles in, she starts wishing she had never taken you for granted. That's the quiet victory of silence. It doesn't demand respect, it earns it. When your silence extends long enough for her to truly feel your absence, a shift begins deep within her mind. It's no longer about who's winning or who's losing the power game. It's about the emotional emptiness that starts to take root. She begins to sense that the world feels a little less exciting, conversations a little less fulfilling, and attention from others somehow doesn't fill the same void. That's because your energy, your presence, and your consistency left a lasting impression, one that no one else can replicate. Your silence now becomes the mirror that reflects her actions back to her, forcing her to face what she did and how it feels to lose someone who genuinely cared. At first, she might resist the feeling. She'll tell herself she's fine, that she's happier, more independent, or even relieved. But over time, those thoughts start to crumble under the weight of truth. She starts realizing that her happiness feels artificial, that the thrill she thought she wanted fades quickly. Late at night, when distractions disappear, that's when your silence starts to speak the loudest. It's in those quiet hours that she remembers your voice, your words, and your patience. She remembers how you made her feel valued even when she didn't deserve it. And in that realization, her emotions begin to turn against her pride. The silence becomes her teacher. It teaches her the difference between attention and connection, between lust and love, between temporary validation and emotional security. The men who might be chasing her now can't fill the gap you left because they don't have your energy. The calm, grounded, masculine energy that made her feel both safe and desired. Your silence reminds her that she can have 100 conversations, but none will feel the same. She can post as much as she wants, laugh as loud as she can, but deep down she feels a quiet void. That void is your absence echoing through her emotions. Eventually, the silence begins to break her patterns. She starts questioning her choices, realizing how she might have misunderstood your strength as indifference and your love as weakness. She starts to recognize that walking away from a man who stays silent, not because he doesn't care, but because he values himself, is the biggest mistake she made. And this is where her ego begins to fall apart. The same silence that once frustrated her now becomes the thing she fears most because it represents indifference. And indifference is more painful than anger. Your silence doesn't just make her miss you, it makes her respect you. It shows her that you are not controlled by her reactions, not moved by emotional manipulation, and not desperate for validation. You've detached, grown stronger, and turned your pain into power. And when she realizes that, she'll crave your presence again, not because of what you said, but because of what your silence revealed. In the end, silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of self-respect. And that's what makes her want to come back. There comes a point when your silence doesn't just make her wonder, it makes her feel the full weight of losing you. It's not about revenge or manipulation. It's about allowing reality to do what words never could. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop trying to prove your worth, you force her to face a truth that most people run from. The truth that love, attention, and effort can't be demanded. They must be earned. Your silence becomes a mirror that reflects her choices, her pride, and the emptiness of her actions. It becomes the moment she finally understands that she was never the prize, you were. In the beginning, she might try to distract herself. She'll go out, laugh with friends, post pictures online, and do everything she can to convince herself she's moved on. But underneath that noise, your silence begins to echo louder than anything else. She starts to feel something she didn't expect, a growing sense of regret. Every unanswered text, every ignored call, every moment you used to show up but don't anymore, they start replaying in her mind. What she once took for granted now feels irreplaceable. And that's when your silence turns into her greatest torment because it shows her that she's lost control over something real. The reason your silence hits so deeply is that it carries strength. It's not the silence of weakness or defeat, but the silence of a man who knows his value. It shows that you're no longer reacting emotionally, but responding with maturity. You've stepped out of her emotional game and back into your own purpose. And that shift, that unbothered energy, is what makes her start to miss you on a level she can't explain. She begins to realize that while she was looking for validation, you were busy building peace. While she was trying to prove a point, you were rediscovering your power. As time passes, the balance starts to shift. She starts to wonder if you've moved on, if you've found someone else, or worse, if you've stopped caring altogether. That uncertainty begins to eat at her pride. She starts to check your social media, ask mutual friends about you, and replay old conversations, hoping to find some trace of the man who once adored her. But instead, she finds silence, calm, confident silence, And that silence speaks volumes. It tells her that you've evolved beyond needing her approval. It tells her that your peace means more than her attention. Eventually, the silence becomes unbearable for her. What was once her power, ignoring you, keeping you waiting, now turns against her because deep down she knows she's the one who lost something real. And when that realization hits, she'll come back, not just because she misses you, but because she finally respects you. Your silence, when grounded in self-worth, doesn't push people away. It filters out who truly values you. And that's the most powerful kind of peace you can ever achieve.